Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining today's Facebook Live. As we all know, managing your intake of certain nutrients and fluids is very important if you have kidney disease. However, this is often the most challenging lifestyle change for kidney patients. Today, we'll be chatting with an expert who combines his knowledge of nephrology with his passion for cooking healthy food to helping kidney patients navigate the challenge of kidney-friendly eating. My name is Mike Spigler, and I am the Vice President of Patient Services and Kidney Disease Education at the American Kidney Fund. If you are new to us, the American Kidney Fund is the nation's leading nonprofit working on behalf of the 37 million Americans with kidney disease. Our mission is to fight kidney disease on all fronts to help those affected to live healthier lives. You can learn more about AKF by visiting us online at kidneyfund.org. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Dr. Blake Schusterman, also known as the Cooking Doc. Dr. Blake is a practicing nephrologist at Carolina Nephrology in Greenville, South Carolina, and he's on a mission to get you to enjoy eating healthy, even on a kidney-friendly meal plan. As many of you know, a kidney-friendly meal plan limits the amount of certain minerals and fluids you eat and drink. This keeps waste and fluid from building up in your body and causing problems with your kidneys, heart, bones, and other parts of your body. The specific details of your meal plan will depend on your stage of kidney disease. In the early stages of kidney disease, you may have little or no limits on what you eat and drink. And as your kidney disease gets worse, your doctor may recommend that you limit potassium, phosphorus, and fluids. It can be very challenging to keep track of your food and fluid intake and still find the joy in eating, but today we hope to share some helpful tips and resources to help you along the way. So I want to thank you for joining us, Dr. Blake.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here. Hi, everybody out there. Any conversation that's about food and good eating is one I'm happy to be a part of.
Absolutely. We all need something to cheer us up and give us something to look forward to in times like these, for sure. If you're watching live, please join our conversation. Let us know you're here in the comments section. You can type your questions in. That's located next to or below the Facebook Live video stream. We'll try to get as many questions answered as we can. But let's go ahead and get started and get to know a little bit more about you, Dr. Blake. Can you just tell us about how you became the cooking doc?
Sure. I almost trace it back to my first day at my job. I work in upstate South Carolina, in Greenville, South Carolina, and I'm a practicing nephrologist. And my first day on the job down here, I was right out of my fellowship, and I was touring a dialysis unit that was kind of in a rural South Carolina town. And I did the whole tour, and I ended up in the lobby. And in the lobby, there were these two big vending machines. And on one side, there was the Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Mountain Dew. And on the other side, Doritos, potato chips, candy bars, all these things that were not kidney friendly, not good for people with kidney disease. And, everybody was there getting their dialysis treatments, and the doctors and dietitians would come by and say, you need to eat this or you need to eat that. And meanwhile, we were setting this terrible example by having these machines right in the lobby selling things that are not good for them to eat. And so after that, over the course of the next several years, I tried to think of a way to really inspire people to get cooking and get eating healthy food and kind of do it in an exciting way.
Yeah.
And one of the ways we found was through the Cooking Doc, which is this online cooking show that we developed. And I'm a huge fan of cooking shows, and Rachel Ray, I've watched them forever. And so it just turned into a YouTube channel.
That's great. When you're talking to patients and you're starting to tell them about the kidney diet, what's some of the biggest misconceptions that they have that you hear in those kind of first conversations?
Sure. So there are a few. I mean, the number of misconceptions about the kidney-friendly diet, I could talk for hours on it. But the biggest few that jump out at me are that you cannot eat kidney-friendly or kidney-healthy food and also have food that tastes good. That's the one that kind of really jumps out at me, because if you're thinking that you can't have food that's good for you and that tastes good, then really it kind of puts you at a loss. So I encourage people to cook at home, and if they learn to cook at home and choose the right ingredients, then you can both make it taste good and you can also have it good for you. So that's kind of the top one. But looking at the other ones, one is that there's a one-size-fits-all diet for patients with kidney disease, and I'm glad you mentioned that at the beginning. people who have mild kidney disease eat a much different diet than people who have advanced kidney disease who are on dialysis. And when you look up a kidney friendly diet online, sometimes you don't know which part you fit into. So those are kind of the biggest misconceptions that I see. And I'll also mention one more from kind of a doctor perspective. And I don't know if some of you out there can empathize with this, but doctors often have a misconception that people don't want to do the healthy eating that will make them better. And I think that's totally incorrect. People certainly have barriers, whether it's
Hmm.
knowledge barriers or monetary barriers that may keep them from doing that. But most people I meet want to do whatever they can, especially as it relates to food, to keep their kidneys healthy.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. In our screening programs we talk to people at the end of the line. They always say, okay, well, all right, I understand this is a problem. What do I eat? Like, how do I do it? They do seem motivated to do it, but it's just some of those challenges and barriers. Could you a little bit more about some of those barriers and challenges people run into? I mean, I know, obviously, this disproportionately affects African American and Hispanic communities, and a lot of times in urban settings, there are food deserts. I know is one option, one problem that they have to overcome. But I'd love to hear some others also.
Yeah, so anything from the food deserts that you mentioned, sometimes people they don't know how to fit in a diet that's good for their kidneys with also a diet that maybe is good for their diabetes. That's kind of one of the
Mm-hmm.
hardest things that I hear from people every day. My diabetes doctor told me never to eat white foods, white bread, white starches. And then here I am, I go to the kidney doctor, and you're telling me to avoid whole grains and all this stuff and only eat white breads. And so, when you're getting conflicting information, it's tough to know exactly what to do.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. And there's so many patients, especially when you're talking about dialysis patients, that crash into dialysis. They haven't had access to someone like you to explain to them how they can keep their kidneys healthy, or they just were diagnosed too late. For those patients that are just kind of thrown into that, right? They didn't even know how to cook. We've done a really good job with our Kidney Kitchen website to lay out even just the basics of, what are the utensils kitchen
Mhm.
tools you need in the house, in your kitchen, to make it work. But how do you help them? Okay, so they understand it's an issue. They have the motivation now to do it. They're overcoming this. What do you recommend for them taking that first step in the kitchen?
So, a couple of things. And it can be challenging to take that first step in the kitchen, especially if you don't know how to cook. If you don't know how to boil water,
Right,
even the most basic things.
right.
So if you're in that position, you have to be ready to fail. First of all, you're going to make some horrible food. Whether you
Hmm.
choose to eat it or not, that's up to you. But you're going to make some terrible food along the way, and that's okay. Um, but you want to just, if you get a knife, you need a nice sharp knife, a cutting board, a saute pan, a pot, and you should kind of start there. A lot of places have cooking classes as well. A beginning cooking class is a great thing to do. You can just learn the basics of sauteing or baking or broiling. And once you have those basics, it can really help you manage your kidney disease much better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And for those who are joining in, we're starting to see some questions come in. We will start to answer those right now. But if you want to learn more about our Kidney Kitchen website, it's kitchen.kidneyfund.org. There's hundreds of recipes on there that we've tested and tried, and lots of other cooking information on there as well. We have a question from Faye. You actually just talked about a really good point, Dr. Blake, about how hard it can be to overlap kidney disease and diabetes and some of these other things that people are dealing with. And not everyone has an access to, a doctor like you, who has this kind of subspecialty they've added on top of it through the years too. So a renal dietitian, obviously, is something can be really important and helpful for a patient. Any thoughts on how someone goes about doing that and seeing that, and how a renal dietitian can play a role in this process?
So if you're in the early stages of kidney disease, or even later before dialysis, that can be one of the biggest challenges because a lot of practices haven't set up a renal dietitian to help people navigate through this. But there's been a push recently with the National Kidney Foundation and all kinds of organizations to try to get dietitian services covered. And the way that I would suggest finding it is first start with your nephrologist. See if they know of somebody in the area that does it.
Mhm.
If that is unsuccessful, I would go to the big hospital systems in the area. Oftentimes, they will offer either cooking classes or a specific dietitian that can at least kind of get you started on some of the foods that will work and some of
Mhm.
the foods that won't work. We have a hospital system here in Greenville that has a program like that. So it can be tough because not a lot of dietitians are specifically trained in kidney disease, but you sometimes have to kind of spread your tentacles to the bigger hospital systems in the area if you have one to try to find a way to do it.
Right. And isn't it true for Medicare? If you're on Medicare, you can actually, if you have CKD, also get appointments paid for by Medicare even before you're on dialysis.
Absolutely, yes. That is one of the great benefits of Medicare. Actually, sometimes even better than private insurance. They will pay
Right.
for that kidney dietitian. So take advantage of that if you can.
Great. All right. Well, I see I have a similar person with a similar problem out here. Robin just asked about cheese being her weakness. Any replacements for cheese or advice on how to get over that weakness?
Okay, so cheese is a tough one because that's one that often gets kind of thrown out in the you must avoid it either because it's high sodium or high phosphorus. So a couple things that you can do. It depends what you like the cheese on, but one of the ways to kind of get through that is to learn to use just a little bit of cheese. So, some of the problems with cheese are when you kind of smother a dish with all kinds of shredded cheddar cheese or put a slice of American cheese on top, then you get into trouble. But if you can learn to use a stronger cheese, something like a little bit of Parmesan, sometimes will get you a better bang for the buck. A little bit of something called nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast has a little salt in it, but it kind of gives you that cheesy tang that can replace some of the cheese that you may put on top of the food. Um, and then you can also do things like a non-dairy cheese. They still have the salt in them, but they may not have the same amount of phosphorus in it. And again, if you use a little bit, you can probably get away with safely doing it.
Great. And just again, for more information on some other menu items and recipes, you can go to kidneyfund.org/kidney kitchen. You find lots of great information there. Really proud of that site that we have. Let's turn to fluid. We've talked about some food to start with. Um, Many people know that if you're on dialysis, if you're not living that fluid is something you have to watch out for. So I guess I have two questions for you. For someone that's not on dialysis yet, they're in CKD, early stage of CKD, or have gotten a transplant, is fluid something they need to worry about? And for people on dialysis, with summer right around the corner, and and where you live and where I live, it is well around us already and super hot. How do we deal with that kind of the heat and the fluid needs that people and the thirst that people have this time of year?
Um, well, it's such a crazy. This is one of the crazy things about kidney disease, and that on one side, if you're on the early stage of kidney disease, people may tell you to focus on make sure you're staying hydrated, drinking enough water. Then you get
Right.
on the other side, the end stage kidney disease. You have people telling you don't drink so much; it's going to build up, and so that's certainly a very difficult dichotomy and change to make as you kind of go through the stages of kidney disease. But if you're in the early stage of kidney disease or you have a transplant, what I tell people is drink when you're thirsty and you drink mostly water. So your body is really great about signaling when you need to drink. And so you don't have to force the water all day, but you
Right.
have to choose water when you're going to drink something. The problem often isn't that you're not drinking enough water, it's that when you get thirsty, you go for the soda or you go for
Mm-hmm.
the juice or you go for the Starbucks coffee drink with all the sugar and the cream. And so, if you're focused mainly on drinking water or non sugary drinks, black coffee, unsweetened tea, that's kind of the key for the early stages. Now, when you get to the later stages of kidney disease, you're on dialysis, or you have stage 5 kidney disease or heart failure, and you're looking where you have to actually limit how much you drink. That's a whole different problem. The first step, if you're trying to manage that, is actually not related to the water, but it's related to salt. So if you think about the last really salty meal that you had, it doesn't even have to be really salty, just kind of over the threshold of what you're supposed to
Mm-hmm.
have. You are thirsty. I mean, the next 4 to 6 hours, you are thirsty, and you're going to suffer if you're not drinking. And if you're trying to minimize how much fluid you drink, that salty meal will really set you back and make it more difficult. So, first, you limit the salt in your diet. Then, if you're getting thirsty, there are some great suggestions on the Kidney Kitchen, things like um, frozen grapes or frozen fruit, something to just kind of quench the thirst and be cold in your mouth during the hot summer
Mm-hmm.
days.
Yeah, I've also heard like you can get those like refreezable ice cubes. Like they're fake ice cubes, right? They don't really melt at all. They just feel cold that you can put in there to try to help with that also.
What are they made of, Mike? I never heard of those.
I don't know. They're like these little plastic freezable things. I know a lot of people use them in like cocktails because they want their drink cold, right? But they don't want the
I
water to move,
see.
right? So they're like these little frozen plastic ice cubes, basically. So you get that sensation of it being in there, but you're not getting any fluid at all.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Um, what is your favorite kidney-friendly recipe? Like, your go-to.
So, tough question. You ask somebody who loves food what their go-to one recipe is. Um, um, so the things that I look for, if I kind of I look for something low sodium, and if we're really talking a really strict kidney diet, something that's low potassium and low phosphorus. I love a fresh some fresh meat like a chicken breast or um, a boneless chicken thigh, and these are great for the summer. And if you find a no sodium rub, that
Hmm.
is how you really make it flavorful. So the key is to make it flavorful, but still good for you. So if you take a chicken thigh or a small chicken breast and you take a little bit of olive oil and you put some spices on it, some garlic powder, some onion powder, some chili powder, a little bit of paprika, and you rub it in there and you let it sit. And that's the key. You let it sit for 1 to 2 hours so those spices can kind of infuse throughout the meat, and then you put that on the grill. I love a dish like that.
Great, 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 great. Any other summer favorites? I mean, people right now,
Yeah,
that's everyone's used to throwing a burger on the grill, right? A hot dog. I
yeah.
mean, yeah.
That's so. When you're choosing summer favorites, if you have one rule, it's to try to avoid those processed meats, the sausages and the hot dogs, because those are high sodium, high fat, high phosphorus often. So you stay away from those. But the grilled fresh chicken, the grilled salmon, a cedar plank salmon, I love.
Mm.
And then I'm a sucker for a pasta salad. So there are ways to make a pasta salad that's good for any stage of the kidney disease, and that's kind of one reason that I love it. So if you're at the beginning of kidney disease, you have stage 1, 2, or 3, or you're not worried about high potassium, you can make a pasta salad and kind of load it with vegetables, any vegetables that you want. And you top it with a vinaigrette dressing, some red wine vinegar, garlic, Dijon mustard, and olive oil. Whisk that all together, put it
Mm.
over your pasta salad with some fresh herbs and vegetables, and you're good to go. And then, as you kind of go down the stages of kidney disease, say you're on stage 5 kidney disease or end stage, and you have to limit the amount of high potassium vegetables that you're using, it's easy to customize. So you use kind of lower potassium vegetables. So green beans or a little asparagus or cabbage, and maybe you don't put as many in there, but you can still get the same yummy flavor.
Are there some of the like the vegetarian meat alternatives that are kidney friendly? Where do they usually fall on the scale for being kidney friendly? Like a veggie burger as an example.
Yeah, so there are so many of them, and it really depends which one you're choosing. So most of the ones that you will get at the store are high sodium. If you look at things like the Impossible Burger or the Beyond Burger, those
Hmm.
are pretty high sodium and pretty high fat. And so if you're really looking for food that is vegetarian or vegan, but doesn't have those, you almost have to start from scratch,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. So if you're looking for something like a black bean burger is often a good place to start if you're in the early stages of kidney disease, because those can be high potassium. And if you're in the later stages of kidney disease, tofu is actually a great thing to put on the grill or to cook if you're looking for a meat substitute. And there's actually some recent studies and data that suggest that substituting plant-based proteins for animal proteins may give the kidneys some benefit in the long run and help you manage your kidney disease.
Great. And I assume with any of those products, I mean, it's so important to look at the labels, not even just with those products, but anything you're picking up from the store.
I mean, anything. I tell my patients to bring their kids or bring their glasses and magnifying glasses to the store, because the phosphorus additives are really hard to pick up unless you're looking directly at the ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really have to be very careful, and you have to become an expert in ingredient reading. And so sometimes the more you can start with things that don't have a huge list of ingredients that you can cook at home, the easier it is to tailor it to what you need.
Great. And we have some label reading tips on our website too, which is kidneyfund.org/kidneykitchen. So feel free to check that out when we're done here today. One more question. We've gotten a couple of different comments from caregivers, right? So it's always harder on the caregivers, right? They're not the one that has to actually eat it, but they care about their loved one and they want to make sure they're doing right by them. So Linda asked, she said, I'm challenged daily with a diet for a husband on dialysis who loves to eat out every day. So how do you bridge that divide from someone that likes to eat out?
That is a tough one, because you basically are giving up control of your food when you go out. So a couple of suggestions. When you go out, because the point of being on dialysis is not to be a perfect patient. The point is to have a quality of life while dialysis is taking care of your kidneys needs. So I'm with you. You got to keep going out to eat sometimes. So the things that you can look for when you go out are trying to convince your husband to make certain choices at the restaurants, or trying to convince him to maybe not go out quite as frequently. So you can do things like have the sauces on the side. That way you limit a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the sodium. You be careful with things like salad dressings. Avoid things like mashed potatoes, which may be a really high concentrated potassium load.
Right.
Um, and there are some really great resources for kind of tips for eating out. But you're right; you're never going to convince people never to go out, and I understand that. But try to do it less frequently if possible, and then really look towards tips of eating out at a restaurant safely, and that's sauce on the side. Not drinking too much fluid when they bring you the fluid. Sometimes avoiding the bread and the
Mm-hmm.
rolls, which are really high sodium as well.
Is it easier sometimes to have someone when they're kind of changing and getting into this to make a couple small steps, small changes first to get used to those instead of going to this massive, like everything is out of the cupboards, I'm starting from scratch, I'm going to stick with this and then crash and burn?
Mike, did I set you up for that question? I don't think I did, but that's a great question. Um, and that is one of the things that I really think is important. You think about, say, you're 45 years old, and you are told that you have kidney disease. And so you are trying to figure out how to make your diet change to benefit your kidneys. But you have picked up habits over the case of the last 45 years. So going from 45 years of enjoying a certain kind of food to giving up everything and going to a totally different diet is next to impossible. So if you go over the course of even years, and you
Mm-hmm.
do one thing at a time. So first, maybe you look to how to cut back on the sodium. Maybe you look first how to cut back on your soda intake or your sugar intake. And you kind of do it over the course of many, many years. It's okay. And I think that's sometimes a more sustainable way to make that change, because over the course of those years, your
Right.
taste buds will change, and you'll be able to enjoy a whole host of different things. I think about the things that I ate when I was a teenager, and now I enjoy totally different foods.
Right. Yeah. I mean, watching my kids who are, 10. I mean, 2 years ago they eat some vegetables and now they don't, and back and forth. And I think we're all changing, no matter how old we are. A couple of the questions have come in. Um, Someone just asked, since you talked about potatoes, what about boiled and baked potatoes? Plain, no salt. Any advice for potato preparation?
So yeah, so in early stage kidney disease, I think potatoes are a great addition to the diet. Sometimes you have to watch it if you have diabetes because the potato can raise up your sugar some. And then as you get down through the stages, again, the difference between the beginning and the end. But people who are on dialysis or have stage 5 kidney disease, potatoes can become an issue because of the high potassium in them. So there are some tips and tricks where you can get the potassium down in the potatoes, where maybe you soak them in water for a number of hours. There's something called double boiling potatoes before you cook them. You boil them for about 15 minutes, get rid of the water, boil them again, and that leaches out a lot of the
Mm,
potassium. It also leaches out some of the flavor. So you have to. So there's no perfect way to do potatoes if you're on a low potassium diet, but no salt is a great way to do it. But try adding some spices to them. Sometimes a little bit of hot sauce is good on top of it, or just a little bit of olive oil and some fresh herbs or some Italian seasoning to get that flavor without the salt. And lemon. You need a little bit of acid, a
mm,
little lemon to really boost that flavor up without the salt.
great. Any healthy eating advice or tips that people need to follow for kidney transplant recipients?
Kidney transplant recipients, for the most part, they will be somewhere on the scale, either stage 1 kidney disease if you kind of just gotten your transplant, if you're later on, you can be all the way down to stage 4 or 5 kidney disease. But if you're new to a transplant, sometimes it's almost like the whole world is opened back up to you because you've got a kidney that's working well, and you can eat things that you couldn't eat before. And so I think kind of staying towards a general healthy diet is the key in those early years. So you still want to limit your sodium. You want to really load up on things like fruits and vegetables. You want to limit your animal proteins a little bit, but think about a general healthy diet. Some people with kidney transplants are on medicines that can raise the potassium some, so that is occasionally something that you have to worry about. But just think about it as if you're starting from scratch, you're eating a healthy diet, you want to protect that kidney as long as possible. You've gotten this great gift. So, in addition to being sure you take your medicines, think of it as this is how I'm going to protect this kidney that I just got.
And for people that I know, a lot of transplant patients, their immune systems are compromised too. I mean, are there things they need to do any differently around food safety or food choices that they should or shouldn't eat because of that? Or is that really across the board? You should always take those precautions for someone.
Yeah, they are a little more sensitive to things. So, I'm not. I would be hesitant to do things like make mayonnaise at home where
Okay.
you're kind of using a fresh egg. I may be careful of things like raw oysters or sushi or foods that are more on the raw side because you are a little more sensitive because your immune system is lower.
Okay. Some questions are coming in regarding moderation. Can you discuss what does moderation mean to you? And are there some foods that are just a no-go, don't ever touch?
So there was this study about moderation, which was a great study, and why sometimes moderation is not a great way to give advice. Because for me, my I can't walk in the house. I probably shouldn't say this without having a handful of potato chips. Okay, so if you tell me to moderate my potato chips, I'm probably still eating too many. So my definition of moderation is much different than somebody else's. Um, so it's hard to say exactly what moderation is. But if you're looking at kind of foods that are prohibited or things like that are high potassium on an advanced kidney disease diet that they've told you not to eat, you can now you should talk to your diet doctor or dietitian first of all about this. But but you sometimes can eat a little bit of these things. The one thing that is an absolute no-go for people with advanced kidney disease is starfruit. It's an interesting fact that starfruit can actually cause a neurologic reaction in the body. So if you are on dialysis, avoid starfruit. And when we're talking about dietitians, if you're on dialysis, dietitians really are the key to getting through this. If there's
Hmm.
anything good about going on dialysis, is that you have your own personal dietitian. So use them, get a food log. If you're wondering if a food is okay for you in moderation, ask them to look at your labs. I have a patient who was real curious about peaches because he was told that too many peaches would give him high potassium, but he loved peaches. So we checked his blood. His potassium was okay. He ate the peaches during that week. We checked the blood work again the following week, and he was okay. So he was able to kind of incorporate something into his diet that he wasn't sure he was going to be able to incorporate into it.
Yeah. Have you had challenges with any patients that come in and they're not eating a traditional American diet? Although I don't know if that's even really a thing anymore, right? We're such a
Yeah.
melting pot these days. I don't know if that's even really a thing. But one of the ideas, we have a campaign about potassium called Beyond Bananas, and one of the ideas came from that was a conversation we had with a dietitian who said she had a patient that was eating bananas and their potassium was up, and so you have to stop doing that. And he came back in and said, "No problem. I've switched to plantains. So I've taken care of the issue." They could not figure out why his potassium was so high. How do you manage that? How do you meet people where they are, right, with the diets that are they're used to, that they've grown up with? Because the website, a lot of these websites that are out there don't really have a lot of detail on those kinds of things.
It's a middle ground for sure. Almost any recipe from any cuisine from around the world can be adapted in some way so that the ingredients are healthy for your stages of kidney disease. So if you're looking at Italian food or you're looking at Chinese food or Thai food, sometimes you can adjust the vegetables that you're putting in the dish, or you can adjust the seasonings. And it's really important for me as a doctor, and doctors, we're not as good as dietitians are on this, to really listen
Hmm.
to people and see how you're cooking and what you're using and what you enjoy. And by listening to people and trying to give them specific suggestions, it's much more successful than kind of a generic change your diet and eat this way, as your
Sure.
plantain example shows.
Yeah. So you are probably more familiar with this drink option being from South Carolina than us in Maryland, because although just south of the Mason-Dixon line, we don't really get a lot of this. But several questions have come in about sweet tea. What if someone has a sweet tea addiction and they're in late stages of kidney disease or early stages of kidney disease? Any recommendations there?
Okay, so I hear this all the time. And it's funny, if you talk to my patients, it doesn't matter how big of a container of sweet tea they're making, whether it's little or whether it's huge, they always put 2 cups of sugar in it. And so these are drinks that are loaded with sugar. So I hear it all the time. So there are a couple of suggestions, things that I would recommend. The first is that, first of all, don't buy the already made sweet tea in the jugs at the store. Those are often loaded with phosphorus additives and
Mm.
can get you into trouble. The second thing is, if you're making sweet tea at home, 2 suggestions. One is that you slowly cut the sugar down. So if you're at that 2 cup stage, you try 1 cup for a couple months. You let your taste buds get used to a little less sweet tea. Then you cut down to a half a cup, then a quarter cup. And what I do to kind of add some flavor back in instead is I will take a sliced orange or a sliced lemon and
Mm.
some fresh mint and let it sit in that tea for a couple of hours, sometimes overnight, depending on how strong you like the flavor. And that will get rid of some of the sugar, but also keep a little different flavor in there.
That's a great idea. Great idea. We have a couple people asking about uric acid, lowering uric acid. I'm assuming these are people probably dealing with gout. And another plug for one of our campaigns is Goutful. If you want to learn more about gout and controlling uric acid, you can check that out on our website as well. But Dr. Blake, uric acid, its relationship to diet, and is cherry juice a myth?
The cherry juice, I think the jury is still out on that. There are some studies that suggest it might be helpful, but I'm not convinced, honestly. I have some patients that are convinced, but as kind of somebody who's been through the literature, I am not fully convinced that that is the key to keeping that uric acid down. Most people who have gout attacks, they're pretty knowledgeable. And if you
Hmm.
look back at what you've eaten, you can usually find that trigger. Maybe you had a big steak the night before, or maybe you went out for all you can eat shrimp. If you are looking for kind of gout is interesting because with the kidney disease diet, it's like a diet that for the most part is something that kind of slowly progresses over time that you have to watch for chronic changes. But with gout, you can almost pinpoint that meal that set off the gout attack. So limiting things like animal proteins and seafood and really looking at what your triggers are is sometimes important.
Okay, great. So we've got just a few minutes left. I want to make sure people get their questions in. You've got a few more minutes to get some questions in if you'd like to. A question I wanted to jump up, someone sent a little while ago, and I was just waiting for the right time. Someone asked about avocados. Where do avocados fall on the scale?
Avocado is a very high potassium fruit. I love avocados. And I think in the early stages of kidney disease, before you are worried about potassium in your food, avocados are great. They're full of healthy fats, they're full of flavor, they fill you up. You can put them on top of anything. And so at the beginning of kidney disease, I love avocados. I'll have them on anything. When you get down to somebody who is needing to lower the potassium in your diet, avocados are a difficult one because I think a full avocado has probably close to 1,000 milligrams of potassium in it. So if you are eating an otherwise low potassium meal, maybe a couple slices of avocado on
Hmm.
top are the way to go. That's kind of what goes back to the moderation question. Sometimes foods aren't fully out, but you can have a couple slices of the avocado on top. But a full avocado is a very high potassium fruit, good for people who have mild kidney disease, not so good for people who need to really limit the potassium in their diet.
Got it. Got it. So I just went through a whole process when everyone went into lockdown and quarantine. Grocery stores were a nightmare. We're coming into hurricane season, so for people on the East Coast and the South and the Southern Coast, having those kind of emergency shelf-stable foods are important. What are some very basic pantry items that people should have for those kinds of events?
So pastas are good, just kind of some plain pastas. I tell people to load up on herbs, some dried herbs, some vinegars, because no matter what you're eating, you're going to want things to be flavorful. So if
Hmm.
you have those things on hand, you can turn a little bit of white rice into something that's good. Um, Things like canned tuna are often good. Just look for things that don't have a lot of added sodium or a lot of added phosphorus. The things you want to stay away from are things that are high sodium canned soups, high sodium canned beans, high sodium canned tomatoes. Most stores have good low sodium options of them. You have to be careful of those too because the low sodium options are still sometimes high sodium. So if you can
Hmm.
find no sodium, you're better off.
Great. So we got about 5 minutes left, and I want to give you a chance for kind of a closing statement. What's the main takeaway you want kidney patients to know about kidney-friendly eating?
So kidney friendly eating and people with kidney disease. So the food that you choose can impact how you do from the time that you've first been diagnosed, or even if you are at risk of kidney disease and you don't have it yet, all the way down to somebody who is on dialysis or has had a kidney transplant. So there are very few things that you can do for your health that matter as much as choosing the right food and learning how to eat. And the way to do it is to really kind of learn to cook at home. If you learn to cook at home, you can be in control of everything and you can really take charge of your kidney health.
Hmm.
And, I am really excited to be working with the American Kidney Fund on this. The Kidney Kitchen is great. On my website, I'm also looking, it's thecookingdoc.co, and I've just working on updating all of my recipes so everything is labeled high potassium, low potassium. And so it'll be easier for people to navigate if they're looking for recipes that work for them. But learn to cook at home. That's the key.
Great. And Dr. Blake, you're also a great follow on Twitter. I don't know if you want to throw out your Twitter handle too.
Sure. Yeah, I'm the Cooking Doc. So you can find me at the Cooking Doc on Twitter. I have a YouTube channel, The Cooking Doc, also active on Facebook. I'm always looking for ideas of new things to cook or new topics to cover, questions to answer. Just let me know.
Great. Yeah, I've seen you thrown out to kind of challenge me, and people come at you pretty strongly with some things sometimes too. So,
They do.
like I said, you're a great follow. Well, Dr. Blake, thank you again for spending this time with us this afternoon and providing some great advice. There's so much to talk about when it comes to healthy eating, cooking, and shopping when you're living with kidney disease, and we can't wait to bring you back on for more chats in the future. I want to thank everyone at home for joining in too. Remember, you can visit the American Kidney Fund's Kidney Kitchen at kidneyfund.org/kitchen for more information about nutrition, a searchable database of over 300 recipes and growing every day, video tips, and many other resources about kidney-friendly eating for patients and caregivers. And if you aren't already, follow us on Facebook or send us an email through kidneyfund.org, and you'll be the first to know about other resources like this. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.